Welcome to ThinkTech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm your host, Jay Fidell.
And I'm your co-host, Nicole Hori.
In our show this time, we'll cover the recent conference of Hano, the Hawaii Alliance of Nonprofit Organizations. It took place at the Ala Moana Hotel in Waikiki.
A large number of nonprofits were represented at the conference, making it clear how important nonprofits are to our community.
There are thousands of nonprofits in Hawaii, each trying to make a difference. Hano's mission is to unite and strengthen the nonprofit sector and to improve the quality of life in these islands, nothing less.
The Hano Conference is presented annually and offers information and advice to its members and to all nonprofits to build a collective force and generally improve the quality of life in Hawaii.
The conference this year was held at the Ala Moana Hotel, and it filled many rooms there. There were keynotes, panel discussions, and a trade show of vendors who serve the nonprofit community.
We're going to be changing the game with new conversations.
Talking about ways to change the game for nonprofits.
We're going to have a lot of sessions that engage conversations about new ways of looking for nonprofit solutions.
Well, we're just very excited to be here in Hawaii to sort of learn from what the sort of local solutions are to solving the problems in local communities, but then maybe bringing some ideas from other parts of the country and other parts of the world, in fact.
We're here at the start of the Hano conference, and I'm really excited to be here. The Community Foundation's been a big supporter of Hano and trying to get the nonprofit sector together.
It's good to touch base with all the folks in the sector again and hear some new exciting news about what's going on in the sector.
I think it's really inspiring to hear what different people are doing and how we can all work together.
Hi, I'm Tom Kelly with the Hawaii Community Foundation. We're excited to be able to present the findings from our nonprofit survey here at the conference.
The need for networking and knowledge of what's going on and need for more technology utilization is more important than ever.
People together in the room are collectively engaging to the point where there's a tipping point, changing social behavior for good.
We just heard from Calvin Takeda, who gave us a really good broad view of what's going on in the nonprofit sector.
We can make a difference. We can change this conversation in the nonprofit sector.
The opportunity to be in the room with so many other nonprofit professionals here in Hawaii. I'm looking to increase my network because that's how we all solve problems.
Edgar and I are with Olelo Community Media. We're actually interviewing all the participants of this Hano conference.
Your organization may have a way to reach these people in a way that a branch teller or a branch manager could not.
They're saying, well, credit unions, they're not-for-profit, we want to, instead of 100% exemption, is 90%. So the 10% that you have to pay in for all your facilities, in some instances would have been a 2,000% increase in what they're paying now.
It's a good group of people, and everyone's here to try to help the community.
I'm going to be listening to the keynote speaker, who I believe is with the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, and just to give a local perspective to what he's saying.
The opening keynote was presented by Calvin Takeda, CEO of the Hawaii Community Foundation, an important funding source for nonprofits in Hawaii. Tom Kelly, also of the foundation, was the moderator.
The keynote was followed by several morning sessions. These included a panel on the collective impact movement in Hawaii with Howard Garval of Child and Family Service, Scott Marashigi of Focused, and Tracy Yadao of the Department of Human Services.
There was also a panel with Bob Toyofuku of Hawaii Advocates and Nikki Love and Lisa Maruyama of Hano on policy and legislative issues.
There was another panel on social media by Jennifer Barrett of Taming Tech for Good and Allison Higgins of Hano.
And there was a panel on the Community Reinvestment Act and banking by Craig Nolte of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. This was a conference that covered all the bases.
We want to thrive, not just survive. While the tried and true usual approaches are good to keep in our arsenal and our bag of tools, we really need to be adding new ways of doing and being. Well, you've asked us actually in the meantime to convene you more so that you have opportunities to really find each other. When you think about speakers like the interim executive director board session, we understand that concept of using an interim executive director by a board for almost, a longer period of time is actually a kind of an unfamiliar concept to us in Hawaii, that it is very popular. It's a very well-used method for giving a board a break to really step back and look at their strategic alignment with their mission. Are they really impactful? Can they take this time with an interim executive director to take that pause, do a reset if they need to? When you think about the Hawaii Health Connector, we'll hear from Coral Andrews later this afternoon, they're trying to change the healthcare conversation. There may be stops and starts with that process, but ultimately they're trying to change that landscape, the healthcare landscape. The EPIP presentation, the Emerging Practitioners in Philanthropy, you'll hear from them as well in the afternoon. Those are funders and grantees working together, hand in hand, to change their conversation and change their relationship dynamic. So I just encourage all of you, let's think about those tipping points and what we might do today. We really implore of you today to make the most of these sessions, meet up with people that you've never met, look for intersects and new ways of thinking. We'd love to hear your stories throughout the day of those connections. And we'll share them, proudly with everyone at the breaks, at the lunch plenary. And it's going to culminate really in the wine down. So if you can all stay, have your glass of wine, some cheese, you can find your connections.
So I'll start with human service organizations. How many of you are at or attached or work with human service organizations? So we've got more than half of this room, and it does represent about 31% of all the nonprofits in Hawaii. What about education nonprofits? Another good group. That's about 18% for the nonprofits here in Hawaii. Arts and culture. You all represent 14%. I'm going to ask about health organizations. About 12%. So this room is actually a pretty good representation of what we've got in the sector. So what's happened in the state over the last 5 years is we've actually been fairly level. If you add up all the revenue that you all collected and earned in last year, in this case in 2011, it adds to about $5.2 billion for the state. 6 years ago, we were at $5 billion. And if you adjust for inflation, we're actually slightly below where we were 6 years ago. So essentially, the overall revenue in the state, what we're all earning collectively, has actually not changed that much.
For the foundation, we did the first study here in 2000, repeated it in 2006, and then did it again last year. And the real headline story is not much has changed at all. The field has been remarkably stable, and in fact, if you look at the data over the 3 studies, it's been pretty consistent in terms of the percentage of organizations that represent large organizations, that are medium-sized or small, the percentage of organizations that represent different fields or sectors, with some growth in environment and animal-related organizations, but pretty much a stable picture. And I think, as Tom alluded, not just that it reflects also the mainland trends as well. I was surprised that we did not see that much change. Congratulations, you represent persistence and resilience. We ran this study in 2006 on the heels of the last recession and then again, and it's amazing to see that so many organizations, even in the midst of growing demands and shrinking resources, were able to survive through that period. So a highly resilient group.
Now, that resilience happened in a fairly dramatic reshaping of the economy.
Yeah.
I mean, across the globe. But what do you think that is going to do and have continuing effects on in terms of this sector?
Obviously the big issue is the economy. And like Lisa said in her opening remarks, it's really clear that Hawaii's economy lags the mainland. It's pretty remarkable to see the correlation, in fact, by watching the California economy, and about three quarters later you start to see the effects in Hawaii. The tax climate is changing. I wrote an editorial that was in the paper on Sunday, and it's up on our website at hawaiicommunityfoundation.org. But we talked about the giving season, and the fact is that the good news for nonprofits is that there has never been a better tax climate for charitable giving in Hawaii in the recent years. It's due to two things. One is the relative stability of the federal framework around taxation, which also includes the fact that the IRA rollover for giving right now for people 70 and a half years old can take advantage of that vehicle. But also the legislature this year, with the governor's support and with the work that some of you provided, and Hano certainly did, we were able to lift the charitable cap. So there's no limitation on charitable giving as an itemized deduction by people who pay taxes here in Hawaii.
As far as beyond the tweets go, what does that mean? What is the purpose of the title? In our minds, what that means is just to understand that when it comes to social media, it's not just about the tweets, it's not the number of likes, it's not the number of friends, fans, or so on. It's really about the relationships that you're building. How are you educating the public about your mission? How are you interacting with your constituents? And just expanding your brand and helping to get your word out, the word about your mission and what you're trying to accomplish out there in front of the public, so that they can better understand.
Whether not-for-profits need to be more proactive, at the legislature, and more proactive generally. And the other one was whether you need to also look at, although your mission is not-for-profit, I know that some have created profit-making divisions within their organization to help fund them. And that seems to have worked. The other thing that one legislator told me at least 8 years ago, there are many not-for-profits that have the same mission, and whether or not they should consider merging.
The conference went from there to lunch, and a luncheon keynote by David Erickson of the Federal Reserve Bank on what works for America's communities, with reflections by Pono Shim of Enterprise Honolulu.
That was only the beginning. There were more afternoon sessions with many speakers on subjects of interest to the nonprofit community, followed, of course, by a networking mixer at the end of the day.
The conference was a success. It was well planned and executed as in previous years. It was great to see the members of the nonprofit sector there in force and in such fine form. Kudos to Lisa Maruyama, CEO of Hano, and the other organizers, presenters, and sponsors who made it possible.
Nonprofit organizations are important to the welfare of our state. We need to support them individually and through Hano. If they don't provide the services and passion that they're capable of, the government will have to provide those same services, which may or may not happen. Suffice to say, it is better and far more efficient that we have a robust nonprofit sector. Hano helps us do that.
If you want to know more about Hano, take a look at hano-hawaii.org. And now let's take a look at our ThinkTech calendar of events going forward.
At ThinkTech, we stream video and audio of all of our shows live on the internet from 2 to 5 p.m. every weekday, and we replay them all night long on ustream.tv. Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our live stream and YouTube links. Raise your awareness on ThinkTech.
In the meantime, Nicole has a report on her visit to the recent Joint Committee legislative hearing on renewable energy interconnect issues with Hawaiian Electric Company.
We had testimony from Hawaiian Electric with Scott Siu and Colton Chang, as well as Leslie Colbrooks, who previously moderated one of our ThinkTech luncheon panel programs, Mark Duda, who's definitely appeared on ThinkTech quite a few times in the past, as well as an expert from the mainland. And then after their presentations were over, there were lots of questions from the senators and representatives present. It's clear that there's some pain in the solar industry right now. I hadn't realized how bad it was, but apparently there's a lot of companies that aren't really able to work fully or are dealing with some uncertainty when they talk to customers, because even though this is the time of year that sales are normally very high and they're normally installing a lot of systems and making their profits for the year, there have been some delays in the approvals for the net energy metering connections. So for instance, if a homeowner has installed a system and is trying to get it through the approval process, it's going to be signed off by the electrician, and then that request goes in to connect it to the grid. And currently, the requirement is that you have to have it signed off and said that this is built to the standards and requirements, and then you get the approval. The problem is that at that point you've already spent a lot of money. You don't want to have any uncertainty about whether you're going to get that approval or not. And this is handled differently on different islands. So for instance, on Kauai, you would get the approval before you even start the construction or go through any of the borrowing money to build this project, that kind of thing. We still had double the installations in 2012 that you had before, and it's still in an upward trend, but it would be even higher if it weren't for this. And so given this and other trends, it looks like the solar companies are trying to diversify as much as possible, get into
out of solar.
Well, so that's not the only service they're providing, because really they have expertise in construction and electrical work, and they can do a lot of other things besides solar. And we do want to see them stick around because hopefully they're the ones who are going to be helping us with our systems if there's a warranty issue or something like that 10 years down the road. This is a major time of uncertainty because there are homeowners who don't know if their systems are going to get approved or if they should move forward with construction.
So it sounds like the legislators involved, to a large degree, left it in the hands of the utility and industry to continue to try to work this out.
I think so. I think so. I hadn't realized how much this was impacting the solar energy industry. And it does make you question whether now is a good time to put in a solar panel on your roof. But I think this is something we should follow closely in the future because hopefully this is something that will get worked out, and if we could have a better process for getting those approvals, it would be much, much better for the whole state.
Well, we'll have to leave it there, Nicole. That's great. Thank you for going down to the hearing and reporting back to us.
Thank you.
We'll be doing a separate show in that hearing in the next few weeks, so watch for more on energy issues at ThinkTech.
And now, here's Bill Spencer, President of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association, with this week's Spensation.
We know we're fishing the oceans out, and we talked about it once, but we don't talk about it again. And the press isn't really covering it. People are not particularly concerned about it. They think maybe it's a problem that happened and went away. But in fact, just like climate change, it's inexorable. The oceans are being fished out, and we are seeing these ad hoc reflections of that all over the world. This is of great concern.
It's a huge problem, Jay, and it's all a consequence of the fact that we still hunt for seafood. It's the only thing we still hunt for as a way of feeding our planet. But as our planet reaches 10 billion people, if we don't change our ways and start farming fish as opposed to hunting for it, we're going to do incredible damage, and it's going to be much more near-term problem than climate change will ever be.
I think fish will become extinct.
Well, they already are, and many fisheries are near depletion. This is also a tinderbox issue. Look at the South China Sea and the fight between the Thais and the Philippines and the Chinese over fishing rights there. I mean, these are flashpoints where we'll be seeing, fighting happening, wars happening over fishing grounds before long. So, the solution is to stop hunting for seafood and start farming.
Yeah, well, it's one of those old stories that was reported once and not followed up. And so people, think that it's been resolved, and they don't realize that the silence in the press doesn't mean it's been resolved at all. It probably, it's a good indication it's getting worse. And nobody's doing anything about it. I mean, what about the international organizations that are supposed to be fixing this?
Yeah, it's a joke, Jay. Nobody plays by the rules. These organizations will set, quotas, they'll set size limits, but it's totally ignored. The Europeans love small fish. They don't like the more mature fish. So they're constantly being caught off the coast of Africa going after smaller fish which haven't reached sexual maturity, so they haven't had a chance to procreate. The Japanese started catch and fatten for bluefin, which is the prize, sashimi. What they do is in order to get under the quotas, they catch baby bluefin, put them in cages, and fatten them to market size.
Smart.
And consequently, the babies never procreate. We have the same problem with a particular type of fishing boat called a purse seiner, which is essentially spots a school of fish and circles it with a 60-mile net, a net that's 60 miles long, winch it in, and of course they throw away 20% of what they catch because it's so-called bycatch, it's not target. So they're not going to put a low-value fish in the hold of their boat. They're going to go after the tunas. Well, what do? They scoop up baby tunas along with mature tunas, and consequently, they're taking these babies out of the water before they've had a chance to procreate. So the numbers are just diving down. It's dreadful.
Well, it sounds like we're going to be in for a really bad time worldwide on getting, popular fish protein onto the table. The only solution is to grow them in aquaculture. And the best solution for ocean fish is to grow the, ocean fish in open ocean aquaculture. And yet, Hawaii is not really supportive, is it?
Well, they have a law in the books. We're the only state in the United States where you can actually lease an ocean column to do aquaculture. But the pushback from the environmental organizations and others, this precautionary principle problem we've talked about before, really delays the process. But I want to just point out, farming seafood is the most efficient way to make protein. Let me just give you an example. A wild fish, a wild tuna, eats other fish, right? And those fish have eaten other fish all the way down the food chain. So to make 1 pound of tuna, wild tuna, that tuna is eating the equivalent of 100 pounds of other fish for every pound of growth. Whereas when you farm a fish, you're feeding it low-level troposphere fish combined with other types of protein, may come from algae, maybe 1 to 2 pounds per pound of growth. What could be more efficient? It's inevitable, in my opinion. Of course, it's an imperative that we start farming fish instead of hunting for it. The question is, when are we going to reach the, tipping point of agreeing that has to be done?
I don't know, Bill. I think, it has all the earmarks of one of those sustainability issues where we're going to have to reach high crisis before anything is done. And when we reach high crisis, it'll be very hard to do anything. And I think what we can do here, you and me and ThinkTech, is to keep on pounding on this issue and trying to get people to understand how important it is that we do open ocean farming here in Hawaii, at least for our own benefits, but also for the benefit of the world. This is an issue that is going to really be problematic going forward.
And very soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech. But first, we want to thank our underwriters.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Maui Electric and Hawaii Electric Light Company on Hawaii Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company.
The High-Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle & Cooke Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state.
Hawaii Gas, formerly the Gas Company, a proponent of the Liquefied Gas Initiative, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future.
Collateral Analytics, a Hawaii-based tech company empowering the real estate industry with greater and faster access to the tools and data they need to make better informed property investment decisions.
The Foreign Trade Zone, operated by the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, encourages international trading in Hawaii and brings the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. Okay, Nicole, that wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like our host John Sweeney does, even when he is broadcasting from Russia, as last week. For additional times, check out OC16.tv.
Definitely, Jay. For lots more ThinkTech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on ThinkTech on OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be an underwriter, a sponsor, or a volunteer, and help us reach Hawaii.
I'm Jay Fidell. Thanks so much for joining us on ThinkTech. You can watch this show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode. Aloha, everyone.
I'm Nicole Hori. See you next time.